Hi, I'm Scott Humphrey, CEO of the World Floor Covering Association, and I'm so excited to be a part of this experience and pouring ourselves into you to make your 2022 the best it can possibly be, both on a personal and on a professional level. I am a big fan of the Shaw Flooring Network and its leadership, and they've given me the opportunity to be with some other great experts and share with you different aspects of leadership that can make you better at what you do, kind of ease your life a bit, and make 2022 a phenomenal year. I want to talk to you today about change. It's something I'm really passionate about. It's something that I believe I understand and have a grasp on, but I'll readily admit it's also one of those things I really am challenged with in my own personal life. It was Ben Franklin who said, when you're finished changing, you're finished. Change is essential for growth in life. And we get in many periods in our life where we become somewhat stagnant. I want to talk to you a little bit about that. I'm going to talk to you about the best time to change, and I'm going to talk to you about what you need to change going into 2022. But first, let me address the relationship with the Shaw Flooring Network and the WFCA. The Shaw Flooring Network has joined the WFCA in full, unless you chose to opt out, and if you did, we'd love to have you back in. But this partnership is a passion of mine because I spent many years leading the Shaw Flooring Network. I have great respect and admiration for the leadership that leads the Shaw Flooring Network today, and I'm excited about what we can do together to make your life better and more profitable and easier on a day-to-day basis. So what is change? Well, change is an essential desire in your heart and your life that leads to an action. In definition, it simply means the act of becoming something different. Now note, it doesn't say the act of thinking different. It's the act of being different, to actually become something different. So what's the best time to change? Well, the best time to change, it's like the old saying, that what's the best time to plant a tree 20 years ago? What's the second best time? Now. The best time to change is now, because you want to be in charge of the change that happens in your life. Take my career path. I'm now at the WFCA. I've been there 8 years. But before that, I spent 25 years at Shaw in a number of different capacities. And during that time, I learned that being adaptable, being willing to change, is essential to growth. At least I learned that on the professional side of my life. In reality, on the personal side of my life, I consider myself a bit of a change expert. Now, I don't mean to be cocky about it because it's not really the kind of change expert you're thinking of right now. You see, I have triplet daughters and a son who's not much older. So when I'm talking about change, I'm talking about change. And I mean changing diapers. My wife and I knew the triplet experience would be something unique to us. And so we tracked it. We logged in the number of diapers that we changed on a daily basis. And I can tell you that ultimately we changed somewhere between 10 and 12,000 diapers. Why is that important? Because it taught me something about adults. Adults really are just babies in big bodies. So when you have a baby who is dirty, you know they need to be changed. It's obvious to everybody in the room. But what's the initial reaction of a child when you lay them on their back to change? They fight, they push back, because change is something that's uncomfortable for them. They feel out of control. As adults, we can be in a situation where we don't like it at all, but we still fight the change because we become comfortable. We're used to that environment. Changing means a little bit of effort, and sometimes a little bit of pain. So as we look at your 2022 and how we can make it the best it can possibly be, one of the first things you want to consider is, what is the best time to change? I'm going to tell you there are 3 really good times to address change in your life. The first time to address change is during a time of crisis. In fact, for many of us, it's when we're most willing to address change, or at least consider it. I remember years ago during the Great Recession, 2006 to 2010, I was helping to run the Shaw Flooring Network at that time, and one of our vendor partners was Hunter Douglas. And I remember talking to some of the guys that represented Hunter Douglas to us, and we were talking about the recession and how it was impacting. They said, "Oh, it's not impacting us." And I said, "What?" They said, "No, we had a call with our CEO, and he said that Hunter Douglas has decided not to take part in the recession." I thought, wow, here is in a time of crisis when everybody seems to be going one direction and hunkering down, they have opted to change the mindset, to do something different. And with the CEO relating that information to the team, that permeated not only to the team, but to every customer that they had. Take the retail environment during COVID. If you were really struggling during the early part of 2020 with what to do with your business and how retail was going to be impacted, you could have gone one of two ways. Many people hunkered down. And during times of crisis, that's what many of us do. We cling to the things that we know. We resist change. But others, and those who really succeeded, opted to do business differently. They chose to do what others were not willing to do. I've got a group of about 8 retailers that I talk to every other week. And they were sharing best practices and ideas. And I can tell you, for many of them, they never had a down month, because they took the opportunity to put their people on the phones and say, hey, listen, your business is shut. This is the perfect time to replace the flooring. They did something that others didn't do during a time of crisis. Another time to address change is during times of comfort. It's one of the more difficult times because we're satisfied, and satisfaction and improvement don't often go together. Satisfaction is a detriment to wanting to change. So 8 years ago, I told you I became the CEO of the WFCA. I was in a great place in my life. I had a great job at Shaw. I was over the Shaw Flooring Network. We had these 2,000 customers who were the elite customers in my mind of all that Shaw had. And I get a phone call one day. And it's a guy that says, hey, the WFCA's CEO has passed away and we're looking for somebody. I said, well, I don't know of anybody. I said, but I'll keep my ear to the ground. And they said, well, no, we were thinking about you. And I said, you got to be kidding. Why in the world would I make a change now? This is everything I wanted. I'm comfortable. But I had made a list of 10 things I wanted to accomplish in my life. And really, just to get the guy off the phone, I said, okay, send me the job description. When he sent it to me, 9 of the 10 things that I wanted to accomplish in my career were on the front page of that job description. And I had to say, okay, my excuse is gone. In a time of comfort, I'm willing to embrace change. Now, for companies, this can be even more important. You think about companies like Blockbuster, Service Merchandise, Kodak, Polaroid. These are all companies that were at their prime at one point, leading their industries, and either they're not in existence today or their existence has dramatically changed. In fact, in the flooring industry, back in the late 1960s, a company called Barwick Mills was one of the largest mills in the world. But they don't exist anymore. Danny Crutchfield, who leads the Shaw Flooring Network, went around to find out what was the reason they're not in existence. And he made some phone calls to some of the people that sat on the board. And they talked about a time when they asked the CEO, what are we going to do differently? And he said, we're not going to do anything differently. We're going to let the customer adapt to us. And they said that was the beginning of the end. We have to be willing to address change, even during times of comfort. If not, we develop what's called a rut. And a rut is just a channel that goes between 2 endpoints. It's like a grave with both ends kicked out. People still die there. They just do it moving back and forth, so they don't realize they're really dying, but they don't experience any of the world that's going on the outside. Third, the best time to change, times of celebration, when things are going great. The best leaders understand the growth curve. And they realize that sometimes you have to invest and you go down before you go up. But as you're going up, eventually it's going to go down again. So before they see that downward turn, they will reinvent themselves again to get on a secondary growth curve. A few years back, I was in the airport flying to China, going to Domatex there. And I'm in the Delta Sky Room, and I bump into Pete Dosch, from Cortec and from Shaw. And I said, Pete, how's Cortec going? I'd spoken to his group earlier that year, and I knew that things were really rocking along. And he said, man, it's going good. He said, but hey, Scott, he said, something even better is going to come along. And when it does, you're going to know about it before me. Will you make sure you let me know what it is? Here's a gentleman at the peak of his game, just a short period of time after that, sold his business to Shaw. But in the midst of the height of his business, he's looking for the next great things. And times of celebration are phenomenal times to at least consider change in your life. All right, so times of crisis, times of comfort, times of celebration. Now as we look at 2022, what are the things you should focus on changing? Briefly, and I hope you really etch these into your mind. The first is change your attitude. Change your belief. Again, everything as a leader is magnified and multiplied. You are contagious. And so when you come to work with a bad attitude or you approach things from a negative standpoint, everybody around you will likely mimic that and do the same thing. Another word for attitude is belief, right? So change your belief. Believe that something is possible. The story is told of Houdini, the great magician, that he had this running bet that when he would go into a town, there was no cell in a jail that could lock him up. And time after time, he would go in and he would find a way to get out. He would bribe somebody to slip him a key, or he would swallow the key, and he had the ability to spit the key back up. And time after time, he succeeded. But he was in Scotland one time, and they bragged about this new jail cell they had created and that no one could get out of it. And try as he might, Houdini tried everything he had. He could not get the lock to move. And finally, he conceded, "You beat me. What did you do?" And they said, "The cell was never locked. It was only locked in your mind." That's how many people function. When you go into 2022, as you look at the rest of this year, don't let your mind be locked. Embrace change. Change your attitude, change your belief, and you'll change your destiny. The second thing you've got to focus on changing is changing your actions. Dr. Albert Moravian, a psychologist at the University of California, Los Angeles, did research to determine what is it that makes people believe us. Here's what he found out. 7% of your belief comes from the words that you say. 38% comes from the way that you say those words, or what he called the music. But an overwhelming 55% of what people believe about you comes from what he called the dance, or the body language that accompanies the words and the music. Think about it. You can change a lot in the way people perceive simply by the music that you put in. Let's try this. You're okay? You're okay. You're okay. Same words, right? Different meaning. What changed? My tone of voice and also the action that back that up. People are not listening to your words, especially as a leader, nearly as much as they're focusing on your actions. What are you doing to show your people you care about them? What are you doing to invest in your people and show them that you believe there's more possible for them, that there's further that they can go, that they have their own growth curve, and you want to help them intercept that and reach the next pinnacle? Finally, when you look at what to change in 2022, I want to challenge you to change your outlook. Change your belief system about the future. What is the vision for you? Without a vision, people perish, and you as a leader are responsible for casting that vision. So make sure your people are on board with that vision, but that the vision is very clear to them. I remember the story of George Foreman, the great heavyweight boxer, who in 1987 comes back out of retirement and decides that he's going to fight for the heavyweight championship of the world. And when he made that decision, he got a trainer to come and work with him. And as he's working with the trainer, he's just not satisfied with what's going on. And the trainer says, "I don't understand." He said, "Well, how are you training me?" "Well, I'm training you as George Foreman. You used to be a heavyweight champion of the world. I'm trying to get you back to your peak." He said, "That's the problem. Don't train me as someone who was the world champion who wants to return there. Train me as someone who's never been the world champion who wants to become the world champion." Your outlook will determine how invested you are in your own success. Listen, change is inevitable. You will face it all throughout 2022. But if you control the change, the outcome is totally different. Every opportunity has another move. Paul Morphy was a chess player back in the middle 1860s. He was raised in a wealthy family just outside of New Orleans. And at a very young age, he would watch his father and his uncle as they played chess. And he thought he could do that. And so he began to play with him. And he was very good. In fact, by the time he was 12 years old, he was considered the best in his community. And by the time he was 16 years old, he was considered one of the best in the world. He traveled all across Europe. And then he came back, went to school, got an education as a lawyer. But when he graduated, he was so smart that he graduated early and he could not open a law practice yet. He got kind of depressed and kind of satisfied. He settled. He got comfortable with the money his family had, and he kind of sat back and he didn't do anything. Finally, he went back over to Europe and he beat the best chess masters in the world and was considered the best in the world at that time. But when it was over, he quit playing chess, moved back to the U.S., and became a bit of a recluse. Years later, there's a pastor in his community who takes a liking to Paul Morphy, and he knows Paul's story. And so he has a gathering at his house one night, and on the wall in his house, there is a picture. And in that picture, Satan is battling a prince over a game of chess for the prince's soul. You can tell from the painting, it's not going well for the prince. In fact, there's an angel in the background. It's obvious. The name of that painting is called Checkmate, and that kind of says it all. It's over. Nothing's really thought about that painting in the pastor's home until Paul Morphy decides to join a social gathering just to get the pastor off his back. He gets there and he's going around, he's meeting a few people. In fact, there are several people there that had hoped they might actually get him to play a game of chess with them. But he gets looking at that picture and he cannot stop. He is just enamored by it. He looks at it and he looks at it and he looks at it. And finally the pastor comes to him and says, Paul, you're being a bit rude. These people came to spend time with you. I'm trying to give you a chance to break out of this shell. Now socialize with them. And Paul said, there's another move. The pastor said, what? He said in the painting, there's another move. That's not checkmate. And the pastor said, Paul, have you lost your mind? He said, do you have a board? Let's set it up. I want to set it up exactly as it is in the painting, and I'll play the prince who has the checkmate against him. Do you have anyone here who plays? He said, well, yeah, we have several guys that we're hoping they might get you to a match. And so they set it up 3 different times. Paul played 3 different people, and in the end, not only did he turn what was called a checkmate around, but he won every match by checkmating them. Everyone who saw that painting up until that point had believed that the story was over. There were no more moves. But Paul Morphy looked at that picture and realized there's always one more move. I challenge you as you look at 2022, never to be satisfied, to embrace change in times of crisis, in times of comfort, in times of celebration, and to change right now, starting today, your attitude and your belief, your actions, and your outlook. I'm hoping 2022 is the best year you've ever had. God bless.